Then there's truth and sincerity. You know, one might say, I know I'm going to heaven. I know I am saved because I am sincere and I feel it in my heart that I'm saved, and I cannot be wrong. There are people that have that feeling, that idea that I'm saved, that because I feel saved, because I feel like I'm saved. But Paul, at one time, felt like this as well when he was known as Saul of Tarsus. Now notice here in Acts chapter 23 and verse 1 here, Paul, of course, this is years after his conversion, he's put on trial, and he's before the Jewish council, and he addresses them. He says, Then Paul, looking earnestly at the council, said, Men and brethren, I have lived in all good conscience before God to this day. And so he's basically saying that everything I've done up to this point in my life, I did with a clear conscience. But he goes on to say all the things that he did contrary to Christ, things he thought was right. He put men and women in prison. He held the cloak of those that murdered the first Christian martyr, Stephen. He was involved in many other persecutions against the church, so much that many of the Christians had to flee from Jerusalem in Acts chapter 8. Paul was behind all of that. And yet he did all those things in all good conscience. But when he obeyed the gospel, it was only when his sins were washed away. Look over in Acts 22 and verse 16. There, remember, Paul, again, this is another one of his trials. He is relating his conversion to those that he was standing before in trial. And he's reminding them how that he took letters of the Jewish leaders to go into places even as far as Damascus over in Syria to find Christians and to bring them back in bonds. And so he's on the way there, and we know the story of his conversion in Acts chapter 9. He relates it again in 22 and in chapter 26 as well. He met the Lord on the road. The Lord told him to go into the city, and he told him what he needed to do. So in Acts chapter 22, verse 16, a man by the name of Ananias comes to Paul, Saul as he's known then. And now why are you waiting? Arise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord. So remember, he was fasting. He'd been blinded. He was fasting for 3 days and praying. This is a man that truly believed in God. Absolutely believed in Jesus. And this is a man that Ananias said, why are you waiting? Be baptized and wash away your sins. He was still in his sins until he was baptized. He had acted in good conscience all his life. And yet he came to a point where he's still in sin.